You know, they say time heals all wounds, but what they don't tell you is that time also steals all the doorways back to the places you love most. I'm 90 years old now, and if there's one truth I've learned in all these decades, it's this. The loneliest feeling in the world isn't being alone. It's standing in the present and reaching back for something that no longer exists. I was born in 1935 in a small town in Pennsylvania where everybody knew everybody. My father worked at the steel mill and my mother kept our house warm with the smell of bread baking every Sunday. I can still close my eyes and see that kitchen, the yellow curtains with little flowers on them, the crack in the linoleum floor that I'd trace with my toe while doing homework at the table, the radio in the corner that brought us news of a world we could barely imagine. But here's what gets me. I can see it all so clearly, every detail sharp as broken glass. But I can never go back there, not just because the house was torn down 40 years ago to make way for a shopping center, but because that world, that entire universe of my childhood exists now only in the fading photograph of my memory. I remember being 7 years old, running home from school because my mother had promised to make apple pie. The autumn leaves crunched under my feet, and the October sun felt warm on my neck. I burst through that front door, and there she was, flour on her apron, smiling at me like I was the most important person in the world. In that moment, I had no idea I should memorize it. I had no idea that one day I'd give anything to walk through that door again, to see that smile, to be 7 years old and have my whole life ahead of me. That's what nobody tells you when you're young. They don't tell you that every moment is a door that swings shut behind you quietly, without ceremony. And once it closes, you can press your face against it. You can pound on it with both fists, but it will never open again. I grew up believing that life was a straight line. You're born, you grow up, you work hard, you build a life, and then you grow old. Simple. Linear. But life isn't a line at all. It's a series of worlds, each one complete and whole, and you move from one to the next without even realizing you've crossed a threshold you can never cross back over. I was 17 when I kissed Mary Ellen Turner behind the gymnasium after the Christmas dance in 1952. Snow was falling, and the band inside was playing Blue Moon, and I can still feel the nervous trembling in my hands when I finally worked up the courage to lean in. She tasted like peppermint candy. Her laugh was like music. We stood there in the cold, and I thought that moment would last forever. It lasted exactly as long as it lasted, and then it was gone. Mary Ellen moved to Chicago the next summer. I heard she married an accountant and had 3 daughters. I married someone else, built a different life. But sometimes on winter nights when snow is falling, I'm 17 again, standing behind that gymnasium, and the loneliness of knowing I can never return to that moment. Never be that boy again, never kiss that girl for the first time again, is a weight that sits on my chest like a stone. I joined the Army in 1953, Korea. I was 18 years old and thought I was invincible. I thought I was going on an adventure. What I found was mud and cold and fear so deep it becomes part of your bones. I lost friends over there, good men, boys really. We were all just boys. I came home different. Everyone who goes to war does, and here's what haunts me. The boy who left for Korea doesn't exist anymore. He died over there, even though his body came back. My mother hugged me at the train station when I returned, and I could see in her eyes that she knew. She was hugging a stranger who looked like her son. I tried to go back to who I was before. Tried to laugh at the same jokes, tried to care about the same things. But you can't unknow what you've learned. You can't unsee what you've seen. That version of me, the innocent kid from Pennsylvania who'd never watched a friend die, was gone forever. And I mourned him. I still mourn him. I met my wife, Dorothy, in 1956 at a church social. She had red hair and green eyes and a laugh that could light up a room. I knew within 5 minutes of talking to her that I'd marry her. We got married 8 months later in a small ceremony with 50 people. We honeymooned at Niagara Falls and stayed in a motel that cost $12 a night. We had our first child, Sarah, in 1958. Then came Michael in 1960 and Jennifer in 1963. Those years with young children, they were chaos. Beautiful, exhausting chaos. Diapers and midnight feedings and sticky hands and skinned knees. Dorothy and I were so tired all the time, so overwhelmed. We'd joke that we couldn't wait for the kids to grow up a little, to get a bit easier. And then one day I blinked, and Sarah was graduating high school, Michael was getting married, Jennifer was moving across the country for a job. The house that had been so full of noise and life and mess suddenly echoed. Dorothy and I would sit at the dinner table, just the two of us, and the silence was deafening. I would have given anything to go back to those exhausting years, to hold my babies again, to hear their little voices calling Daddy when I came home from work, to read them bedtime stories, to teach them to ride bikes, to be needed in that complete, absolute way that children need their parents. But time had moved us forward and there was no going back. My children became adults with their own lives, their own problems, their own families, as it should be, as it must be. But the loneliness of losing those years, of never being able to return to the days when I was their whole world and they were mine, it's a grief that never fully heals. Dorothy got sick in 2003, breast cancer. We fought it together for 2 years, but in the end the cancer won. She died on a Tuesday afternoon in October with me holding her hand. The last thing she said to me was, "It was a good life, wasn't it?" And I told her, yes, it was the best life I could have imagined, but I lied to her. Not about it being a good life, it was, but I wanted to tell her it wasn't enough, that I needed more time, that 47 years together wasn't sufficient to satisfy the hunger I had for her company. I wanted to go back to our honeymoon, to our first apartment, to the birth of our children, to every Christmas morning and summer vacation and ordinary Tuesday evening. I wanted to collect all those moments and live them again, properly this time, knowing how precious they were. After she died, I'd catch myself turning to tell her something and she wouldn't be there. I'd cook dinner for 2 out of habit. I'd hear a noise and think it was her coming home. The loneliness wasn't just missing her presence. It was knowing that the entire world we'd built together, the private universe that existed only between us, was gone. All those inside jokes, those shared memories, those looks across a room that said everything without words, all of it died with her. I'm 90 years old now. My children are in their 60s. I have 7 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. I've outlived most of my friends. I've outlived my siblings. I've outlived the world I was born into. When my first grandchild was born in 1982, I thought I understood what love was. But holding that tiny baby, seeing my daughter become a mother, watching the next generation begin, it was like discovering a new room in a house I thought I knew completely. I got to be Papa. I got to spoil them in ways I couldn't spoil my own kids. I got to pass on stories and traditions. I got to see the world through their eyes again. But here's the thing about grandchildren. They grow up even faster than your children did. One day they're sitting on your lap asking you to read them the same book for the 100th time, and the next day they're teenagers who are too busy for visits, and then they're adults with lives of their own. My oldest grandchild is 43 now, has kids of his own. And I miss that little boy who used to spend every Saturday with me, who thought I knew everything, who made me feel young again. I see my great-grandchildren and they barely know me. I'm just the very old man in the chair at family gatherings. I want to tell them stories, want to pass on everything I've learned, but their attention spans are short and their world is so different from mine. They live on their phones and computers in a digital world I can barely comprehend. They'll never know a world without internet, without cell phones, without instant everything. The gap between us is wider than time. It's an entire shift in human existence. Sometimes I wonder what stories of mine will survive after I'm gone. Will they remember anything about me? Or will I fade into the same obscurity as my own great-grandparents, people whose names I know but whose lives remain a mystery to me? The town where I grew up looks nothing like it did. The steel mill closed in 1984. The house I raised my children in was sold 15 years ago. The church where Dorothy and I got married was demolished. The movie theater where we had our first date is now a parking lot. Every physical location that held my life has either changed beyond recognition or disappeared entirely. I drove through my old neighborhood last spring, thought I'd take one more look. The street where I used to ride my bike is now a 4-lane highway. The creek where Tommy and I caught frogs has been paved over. The school I attended is a senior living facility now. Ironic, isn't it? Even the trees are different. The massive oak that stood in front of my childhood home, the one I climbed 1,000 times, was cut down decades ago. I sat in my car and tried to remember where things used to be. Where was Mrs. Henderson's house? She used to give us cookies. Where was the vacant lot where we played baseball? It's all gone, erased, as if it never existed, as if my entire childhood was a dream I had once. But worse than that, worse than the physical changes, is knowing that the people I was in those places, those versions of myself, are gone too. The boy who ran home for apple pie, the soldier who came back from war, the young father changing diapers at 2 a.m, the middle-aged man building a career, the husband who kissed his wife goodbye every morning for 47 years. They're all gone. They all lived and died, and I'm what remains. I worked for 38 years at the same company, started in the mailroom in 1956, worked my way up to management. I gave them the best years of my life. Every morning, I'd put on a tie, kiss Dorothy goodbye, and drive to that office building on 5th Street. I knew every crack in the sidewalk leading to the entrance. I knew which coffee shop made the best Danish. I knew the security guards' kids' names. I retired in 1994 and they gave me a gold watch and a party. There were speeches about dedication and loyalty. My colleagues shook my hand and promised to keep in touch. Most of them didn't. Within 6 months, it was like I'd never been there. The building was torn down in 2008. 38 years of my life and barely a trace remains. But then I remember the young man I trained who became vice president. I remember the client who sent me a thank you note saying I'd saved his business. I remember the friendships and the satisfaction of a job well done. Even though that world is gone, I was there. I mattered there. Sometimes I dream I'm young again. I dream I'm standing in that kitchen with my mother, or dancing with Dorothy on our wedding day, or pushing Sarah on a swing at the park. The dreams are so vivid, so real, that when I wake up, the grief is fresh all over again. Because I have to remember every single morning that those doors are closed, Those roads are washed out. Those possibilities are finished. People tell me I should be grateful for my memories, and I am, I suppose, but memories are a cruel consolation prize. They let you see exactly what you've lost. They're like windows into rooms you can never enter again. The more clearly I remember, the more acute the loneliness becomes. But here's what I've learned in 9 decades on this earth. Here's the wisdom, such as it is, that comes from standing at the end of a long life and looking back at all those closed doors. You're going to lose everything. Everyone you love, every place you've loved, every version of yourself you've been. Time takes it all. That's not pessimism, it's just truth. And the loneliness of that realization, of understanding that you can never go back, it will break your heart over and over again. But, and this is crucial, while you can't go back, you were there, you lived those moments. You were that boy running home for apple pie. You were that soldier, that young father, that husband. You inhabited those worlds, breathed that air, felt those feelings. They're gone now, but they were real, they happened. And nothing can take away the fact that you were there, that you lived them. If I could talk to my younger self, if I could somehow send a message back through all those closed doors, here's what I'd say. Pay attention. God, please pay attention. When you're standing in that kitchen with your mother, know that you're standing there. When you're kissing that girl in the snow, be fully present for it. When you're holding your newborn baby at 3 a.m, exhausted and overwhelmed, realize that you're holding the entire world in your arms. Don't wish time away. Don't wait for the next thing. Don't think I'll be happy when I get that promotion, or when the kids are older, or when we retire. Be happy now. Be present now. Love fiercely now, because I promise you, you'll blink and it will be gone, and you'll stand where I'm standing, looking back at all those closed doors, wondering why you didn't appreciate them when they were open. The loneliest feeling is realizing you can't go back. But maybe the second loneliest feeling is knowing that when you were there, you didn't fully realize you were there. You didn't know you were living in the good old days while they were happening. I have photographs, boxes of them. Black and white photos from my childhood. Color photos from my children's youth. Digital photos from recent years. I look at them often, not because they make me happy exactly, but because they're proof that all those moments existed, proof that I lived a full, rich, complicated, beautiful life. There's a photo here of me and my brother Tommy, taken in 1943. We're standing in front of our house, both wearing overalls, both grinning at the camera. Tommy died in 1997. I miss him every day. But this photo proves that once we were 2 boys standing in the sunshine, immortal and innocent and together. That world is gone, but it was real. Here's one of Dorothy on our wedding day. She's looking at me, not at the camera, and the love in her eyes is so clear it still makes my heart ache. That young woman in the photo had no idea what life would bring us. The joys and sorrows we'd navigate together, the family we'd build, the life we'd create. Looking at this photo is looking through a window into a world that doesn't exist anymore. But it did exist. We were those people. We had that love. Here's what I want you to understand, whoever you are watching this. Whether you're 20 or 40 or 60, time is moving you forward right now. This very moment is already becoming a memory. The life you're living today will one day be the closed door you're pressing your face against, wishing you could return. So please, please, be there for it. Put down your phone, turn off the television, look at the people you love, really see them, touch them, tell them what they mean to you. Breathe in the smell of your children's hair. Hold your partner's hand, call your parents while you still can. Sit in your favorite spot and be conscious of sitting there. These moments will not wait for you to be ready to appreciate them. The loneliness comes from knowing it's over, from understanding that you can never return. But there's another side to it, a truth that took me 90 years to fully grasp. The loneliness also comes from the fact that those moments were so precious, so beautiful, so meaningful, that their loss leaves a crater in your heart. I'm lonely for my mother's kitchen because being there was heaven. I'm lonely for young fatherhood because holding my babies was the purest love I've ever known. I'm lonely for my life with Dorothy because our marriage was the foundation of everything good in my world. The depth of my loneliness is a measure of how much I was given, how lucky I was, how full my life has been. So yes, you can't go back. Yes, every door closes behind you. Yes, time steals everything eventually. But while you're in those moments, while those doors are still open, you have a choice. You can sleepwalk through your life, always looking ahead to the next thing, never quite present for what's happening now. Or you can wake up, you can show up fully, you can love deeply and pay attention and be grateful for every ordinary miracle. I'm 90 years old. I can't go back to any of those closed doors, but I was there. I lived every moment. I loved and was loved. I raised children. I built a life. I stood in my mother's kitchen. I kissed a girl in the snow. I held my babies. I grew old with a woman I adored. All of those worlds are gone now, but they were mine. I inhabited them. And at the end of everything, that has to be enough. The loneliest feeling is realizing you can't go back. But maybe the antidote to that loneliness is knowing, really knowing that you were there when it mattered, that you showed up, that you loved, that you lived. And that has to be enough because it's all any of us get. These moments here and now that become memories, that become the closed doors we'll one day long to open again. So open them now while you still can. Walk through them, live in them, be present for your own life. Because I promise you, one day you'll be sitting where I'm sitting, looking back, and the only question that will matter is, were you there? Did you show up for your own beautiful, fleeting, precious life? I was there. And despite all the loneliness, despite all the closed doors, despite all the losses, I wouldn't trade a single moment of it, not one. That's my story. That's what 90 years has taught me. And if you take nothing else from this old man's words, take this. Be there, be present, love deeply, pay attention, because you can't go back. But God, you can be fully there while you're there, and that makes all the difference.